Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a minute to go over the scrubber operations. Scrubber operations are a vital component of the work that we do here at Falcon Jet, and I wanted to go over the operations of the scrubbers as in it pertains to your scope of work. So it's vitally important that we take care of these scrubbers. They're a very expensive piece of equipment. Repairs are very expensive, and it is part of your job description and function to maintain and take care of the scrubbers to the best of your ability anyway, according to your use of the scrubbers. So if you use a scrubber, if you're authorized to use a scrubber, you should have a certain level of maintenance that goes into taking care of the scrubbers. The first thing is to understand that all scrubbers must be inspected before each use. So before you use a scrubber, you should inspect it to see that it's in good working condition. Also, during the inspection, pre-use inspection, or what we call pre-operative use inspection, it's a good time for you to make sure that the user before you, or the operator before you, took care of the scrubber and did their closing duties, because you should do pre-operation inspection and post-operation inspections. You're not completed with your job using the scrubber until you've completed the post-op scrubber maintenance and making sure the thing's put up and put away correctly. It's just as important to do that. In other words, don't use a scrubber and then just put it away without doing a post-op duties that need to be completed. So the first thing always is to make sure that you have good scrubber pads. If you don't know how to do any of these tasks that we'll discuss here today, feel free to come by, see me on first shift, and on second shift you need to get with one of your supervisors to go over how to take care of these tasks, like changing a pad. So you have to have a good scrubbing pad on the scrubber in order for it to work correctly. The scrubbing pads get worn down, they wear out, sometimes they hit objects in the floor and they get tore up, and you can't just use a scrubber indefinitely. The pads have to be rotated and or changed in order to work correctly. If you don't do this, you will damage the scrubber. So it's your part of your job task, your job function, is to make sure you have a good pad on your scrubber in order to do any scrubbing that needs to be done. That should be done before you use the scrubber. That's part of making sure the equipment is fully operational, and make sure the vacuum is working, make sure it drops down. You know, you can't scrub a floor if the vacuum's not working, or if the scrubber's not putting out water in solution as you need to. Some of the scrubbers are what we call the H2O scrubbers. I've tried to get all that disengaged. Normally H2O scrubber just means it's water only in the tank unless you flip the switch to turn that off, but we just try to get that disengaged so that you can use solution, because we really need to use solution for all the scrubbing duties that we do. If you have any questions on that, again, check with your supervisor. At any time that you need to, if you have an extra dirty floor, you can always pre-spray the floor with a chemical solution and then scrub it, and then vacuum up, rinse and vacuum up that solution if you need to, but that's only in extreme situations. The general use solution, in the past we've used things like GP Ford or Hurricane, but pretty much we just use SC200 for everything. What matters is the dilution ratio. If your floor is just lightly soiled, I mean, just a cup of SC200 in a full tank of water is plenty. If you have a heavily soiled floor, you can, use 2, 3, 4 cups of solution for a heavily soiled floor. Again, if you're not sure, check with your supervisor, but just learn to adjust solutions accordingly. If it's just dust on the floor, you could use just water and just vacuum and scrub and vacuum up. Just depends on what you're dealing with on your floor surface. Always make sure to fill your scrubber with clean water prior to using it, and then you should also really they should be filled again with clean water at the end of your scrub. That way it's always ready to go. So Best case scenario, you get to your scrubber and pre-op, it's full of water, it's ready to go, and check your pad, it's ready to go. Add your solution, which you may need to do that. Scrub your floor when you get back, and we'll talk post-op here in a minute, but fill it up before you park it at the end of the shift. That way, sometimes we get called out to scrub a floor in a hurry, and that way it's ready to go. You don't have to go, stop, fill up your scrubber, etc. It's good to just have that solution tank ready to go. You can do that when you drain and clean out the dirty tank. If you have a problem with foam collecting in the recovery tank, which is the dirty tank, we have some defoamer that you can put in there, and that knocks down the foam so that it doesn't foam up and gets sucked up into the vacuum and becomes a problem for your scrubber as well. Always, this is very important, never use the scrubber within 15 feet of an aircraft. Actually, we shouldn't be really scrubbing a floor when the aircraft is in the position. Generally speaking, the only time we should be scrubbing a hangar bay position is if the airplane has been removed. So there have been occasions where they've asked us to scrub up a chemical spill or something where there was an aircraft. So in that instance only, we may scrub where there are airplanes there. But again, we need to stay as far away from the aircraft as possible, because if the scrubber were to get away or bump the aircraft, of course, that'd be a major incident, something that you or I, neither one, want to deal with. This is very important to always set wet floor signs around the area you're scrubbing. So try to set, if you have an area to scrub, try to set wet floor signs to the north, south, east, and west of that area, all 4 areas. Or if it's a walkway, at the end of each walkway that you're going to be scrubbing in, things like that. Give plenty of notice for anyone walking through the area that the floor is potentially wet as you'll be scrubbing. You may be out of sight when you're scrubbing, but you have your floor marked. Very important as a safety practice for that to do. And that way, if anyone slips during that period, you are not responsible if you've set up your wet floor signs to notify them. If someone were to slip on a wet floor that you're scrubbing and you did not set up wet floor signs, you would be responsible for that incident. Then when you finish scrubbing the area, it's vitally important that you remove the wet floor signs, and that goes for anything we do with floors, mopping, whatever. If we scrub, if we're going to get the floor wet, we set up wet floor signs, we do our work. After we're completed with that work, put the wet floor signs away. That's part of our responsibility here at Falcon Jet, and it's just a good general practice to do. Otherwise, people learn to ignore those wet floor signs if they're not there for an actual reason. It's always good to check the speed control before you start the scrubber, because if it's ramped up all the way, or depending on the throttle situation on it, the scrubber can take off quickly, run into a wall, run into a person, run into a piece of equipment. So always start out as slow as the scrubber will go and adjust speed accordingly to what you need to do. Generally speaking, using the scrubber in a slow speed does a better job. There's really no need for fast walking the scrubber unless you're just walking it from one area to another. Now, it's always important after you finish your scrubbing duties to always clean the scrubber after each use, which includes rinsing out the recovery tank, and dumping out the trash that's in it, that collects in it. Make sure that you take the filter off if it needs to be knocked out or cleaned, whatever, do that. But usually there's a little catch for trash that gets vacuumed up into the scrubber. Please make sure that you clean all of that out, but rinse the scrubber out, rinse the dirty water out, wash it down into the drain where you're draining the scrubber. Make sure you're using a correct drain. Do not use drains outside that are for rainwater to go in. That's a environmental violation, and we will be gigged for that. So make sure you're draining in the correct drain. Talk to your supervisors if you're not sure, but learn where the drains are where we can drain according to the environmental policies. And then rinse the scrubber out and rinse the drains out. It's very important that we rinse those scrubber tanks out and get all that dirtiness out of there. Otherwise, they leak horribly, which they can anyway, but especially if we do not clean them out. Plus, it's just good for the operation and well-being of the scrubber. Again, clean out the debris trap. That's what they call that. Where when the water gets vacuumed up, it dumps through a debris trap first to catch the large debris pieces of items that may have been vacuumed up. You catch those, dump that out, keep that clean. You can find anything in there that got lifted into there, so just make sure that you clean that out as part of your operations when you clean out the recovery tank. Always store the scrubber where it belongs. Put the scrubber back where you got it from. You know, that's important. Sometimes someone will borrow a scrubber from an area, or they'll use it and they'll not return it, and then someone goes to get the scrubber and it's not there. So it's vitally important that after you clean the scrubber up, that you put it back to where it was, so that you can plug it up and it's ready to go for the next person to use. Again, always plug the scrubber up when finished. Just keep a full charge on them. And then the last thing on that is to always lift up the recovery tank lid, the dirty tank lid, when the scrubber's not in use, and allow to air dry inside there. If the tank is closed, even if you rinsed it out, there's a lot of bacteria in there that grows and forms and becomes very smelly. It stinks really bad, and when you turn the scrubber on and it blows the air out the exhaust, it stinks something horrible, and then everyone around smells that, and it's just a bad situation. So you just let the lid be open so that air gets into the dirty tank and helps that thing to dry properly and stays circulated. That proper circulation is very important. Also, some checklist items that Tenant themselves have put out, and there's some paperwork that you guys will have as you go through this, but daily operation checklist. This is from the manufacturer themselves. It's check under the machine for leaks. If you notice any leaks, we need to get those reported so we can get them repaired. Make sure the squeegee blades are good condition, not any cuts in them. If the squeegee blades are very well worn out or rounded or have cuts or nicks or chips in them, then you're going to leave streaks behind the scrubber, and we've had complaints about that. After the scrubber goes by, there's a streak that goes behind it. It's because of the blade. Sometimes a piece of trash will get stuck in that blade, and it too will leave a streak. It's good to have a towel or rag with these so you can clean those blades off periodically. Hopefully this floor was pre-swept before you use the scrubber, and that's important. So if you go to scrub a floor and there's a lot of trash and debris on it, just sweep it real quick. That'll make your whole your life better as a scrubber operator, because the scrubber will perform much better. If you run a scrubber over a dirty floor, you're going to be vacuuming up all that trash. You'll have to clean all that out of there, plus it gets caught in the squeegee blades, and that makes your floor not near as appealing as it should be. It just doesn't look clean because of that trash, again, leaves streaking behind it. Check the vacuum. Make sure you have vacuum. You turn it on, you've got good vacuum, and that's important. If your vacuum's not good, you're not going to do a good job of vacuuming up the water solution. Check all your filters to make sure they work. There's the filters, air filters in the recovery tanks, and there's also water filters, which those will specifically assign someone to check those, because you got to know right where those are at. But if you're not getting water dispersed from the equipment, most likely it's the filters clogged up. Very easy to pull those, clean them out and put them back in, and the machine usually works. Again, check the scrub head and brushes and pads, and make sure that they're working right. A lot of times you can get debris caught up in them and they too don't work. But again, I want to reiterate the importance of making sure that you have good pads on the scrubbers. They work so much better with a good newer pad. You can reverse them, but you need to know how to drop the pad, change the pad, and put the pad holder back on. That's important for you as a scrubber operator to know how to do that, or get someone that can help you do that, because a new and/or fairly new pad, one that's not worn out to the bone, would look so much better, because the pad may start out say so thick, but eventually it's going to go down to a much thinner debris there. So make sure that that does not happen. Always inspect recovery tank and making sure that it's cleaned out before you even start. Post-operational checklist: clean the solution and recovery tanks out. Solution tank, you don't have to drain it each time. I encourage you to top it off with water. That should be something what we do as a standard operating procedure and SOP, and make sure that that's always filled up and ready to go for the next person to use, because you may be that next person. that needs to use it. And if you go to use a scrubber and the solution tank is empty, then you got to stop, you got to fill it up, and then you got to go back to your area that you need to scrub and things. And so you just burn a lot of time, and sometimes we don't have that time luxury to get things done. To make sure the filters are cleaned out afterwards. Some of those filters can be rinsed out and make sure they're working. For the next person, there's a vacuum fan screen. Make sure that it hasn't got a lot of lint caught up in that. When you plug it in, you can make sure that the battery's engaged and it's charging. Check the squeegees for damage and or wear. They can be rotated and or changed depending on the need. And an important aspect also is the vacuum hoses. Sometimes when you're rinsing out the tank, it's a good idea to pull the hose off and flush it out, because over a period of time, the vacuum hose becomes clogged on all the walls of it as the debris sticks to it, and then you lose vacuum as that happens. I know we recently had one of the scrubbers worked on, and they ended up cleaning out a lot of lint and pieces of wood and just all kinds of things out of the vacuum hose itself, and that was the reason why the scrubber was not vacuuming up solution very good, because it just didn't have the capacity to do that, because the hose was clogged, kind of like a clogged artery in an individual. You just don't get the volume of flow when that happens. So just rinse out the vacuum hoses as well, and you can flush them out and down the drain as well. Check the scrub head and brushes afterwards. Make sure that everything is still good. Make sure you don't have plastic wrapped up around in them or something that you ran over. That's why it's good to pre-sweep. If it needs to be, hopefully the air is pre-swept for you to do that by Falcon, but if not, it would help you to go ahead and do that, because it makes your job easier in the long run. And then occasionally we're going to make sure that the battery levels, the water levels, and the fluid levels in the batteries are at the level they need to be for proper operation. So if those batteries ever run dry, the life of the battery goes to 0, and then you're not going to have any power to run your scrubber. You might fire it up and it works for 15 minutes and then it's not working anymore, things like that. So that kills the battery if they run dry. So if you notice that your batteries are getting low on fluid, please mention that again to a supervisor or someone that can help make sure that the batteries get filled up properly. And you don't want to overfill them, so you got to know what level to fill them so that they're filled correctly, and those things take place. So please treat the equipment as if it was your own, because you need that equipment to fulfill the duties for which you've been hired to do. Falcon Jet expects us to be able to do that. It's a vital aspect of our operation here and the things we do. So take pride in your ability to operate a scrubber correctly and successfully and take care of it, so everyone would be on the same page, so that when you go get the scrubber, man, it's in great condition, ready to go, and you leave it in good condition and ready to go for the next individual. We don't want to get into a shift battle to where first shift didn't do it, second shift didn't do it, and those things happen, unfortunately. But we should all just work together as a team. It doesn't matter what shift we're on. We were the ABM team, and we take care of Falcon Jet regardless of the shift. And they expect us to do things regardless of the shift. None of that matters to them. So let's just take care of our equipment, and in turn that helps us take care of each other and perform successfully as a team, so that we can keep our operation going successfully here at Falcon Jet. And ultimately all our jobs depend upon that. So anyway, take care of the scrubbers. Take the time to do that. Again, don't use a scrubber and put it away dirty. Don't use a scrubber and put it away with the dirty water in the recovery tank. That's unacceptable. And stating that as such, I'm going to monitor this more often, and I'm going to ask you as operators to monitor that more often. So if you go get a scrubber and it's unkept, it's full of dirty water, I want to know about it, because I want to track down who did it, because this will be a corrective action issue. And if I have to issue corrective actions for people to operate the scrubbers and use them correctly, I will. And that'll be a write-up. It'll go in your file. It'll have an effect. And just like any other kind of or type of write-up, those things add up and eventually will be cause for disciplinary actions up into including termination. We're not, as a company or as a unit here at Falcon Jet, going to allow people to disrespect the equipment. And that's just part of what we do. It's part of our jobs. It's you know, that's just part of your job. Just accept it. It's part of your job to do pre-op and post-op scrubber duties and operations to make sure that everything is working correctly at all times. Thank you.